What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, over the past couple of weeks on this channel, over the past several weeks, we have been talking a lot about the drafting process. Who are the Lions going to draft? Who are the top prospects? What's the best strategy? We've done mock drafts, we've done top players, we've done top steals, top sleepers. We have worked a lot with the draft in these past couple of weeks. However, before the draft arrives, obviously the Detroit Lions still have to go through free agency. They still have to decide which players they're going to re-sign, which players they're going to look to bring back, which players they're going to let walk, as well as what new players, what new blood they're looking to bring into the franchise. Now, with the option of franchise tagging players opening up today is the first day that NFL teams can officially sign a player to a transition tag or a franchise tag, whatever they would like to do. Today is the day that will open, and as that is today, I wanted to take a step back from the drafting and take a look at, number one, who the Detroit Lions should look to re-sign, as well as who should get the transition tag or the franchise tag this year for Detroit. Now, before we get into talking about which players should get re-signed and which players the Lions should let walk, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying this Detroit Lions content, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes 2 seconds out of your day to do so. It's quick, it's free, it's easy. As I said, it takes only 2 seconds. I'd be super appreciative for it, and as I said, you would be helping out the channel immensely. However, with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's get right into looking at the Detroit Lions free agent class, who they should re-sign and who they should let walk this off season. Now, this is a very impactful free agent class for the Detroit Lions. This free agent class, I believe, has 18 different members in it, including Kenny Golladay, Romeo Okwara, Matt Prater, Jarrad Davis, Adrian Peterson, and many, many more role players and depth pieces. Now, first off, I wanted to start with this because there are a couple of players that are not going to re-sign. There are a couple of players that have made it very publicly clear that they do not want to come back to Detroit. They would like to chase a championship team. Those players are Marvin Jones Jr., who has said he's likely going to go to the Rams or Miami to go chase a championship there. Adrian Peterson also said that he would love to stay in Detroit but does not want to stay for another rebuild. And then Everson Griffin also seems like he will not be returning. Seems like he does not have much interest in returning to the city of Detroit. So that's 3 members right there. That's easy. The Lions don't really have to stress about. They're likely not going to come back unless there's a big contract. And honestly, I don't think any of them are big losses. Obviously, Marvin Jones being the biggest loss of that group. However, I do think we can still replace Marvin Jones, and Marvin Jones is not coming back. He's made that very, very clear, and it sucks to see Marvin go. Marvin's one of my favorite players on the team, still gonna be one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. However, he will not be returning to the Detroit Lions next season. Now, with those first 3 players out of the way, I wanted to talk mainly about the 2 big names of this free agent class, obviously being Kenny Golladay and Romeo Okwara. Now, these are the 2 players that are going to get the biggest contracts from the Detroit Lions this offseason, and these are the 2 players that realistically are going to be looked at for the franchise or the transition tag. Now, starting with Kenny Golladay, the wide receiver. Obviously, Kenny Golladay is a very good wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. Kenny Golladay makes the offense better every single time he's on the field. He's a number 1 weapon, a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. He is a true number 1 receiver and makes any team that he's on better, and when he is on the field for the Detroit Lions, does make the Detroit Lions a better offense as well as a better football team. However, I don't think the Lions are going to re-sign Kenny Golladay. I think he's going to be asking for a lot of money, and there are a lot of very good teams, a lot of much better options out there that are going to be able to pay Kenny Golladay more money, as well as being able to give him a chance to chase a ring. Now, I do think the Detroit Lions should try to re-sign Kenny Golladay, but I do think it needs to be for the right price. Kenny Golladay being a top weapon for the Lions, Kenny Golladay being a homegrown talent, a guy that Lions fans have seen work his way up, develop in this league, and be one of the league's most productive and efficient and dangerous wide receivers when he is fully healthy and fully on the field. However, I don't think the Lions are going to be in a position to pay Kenny Golladay the money he earns and the money he deserves and the money he's going to be asking for. And although he is available for the franchise tag, and although that is an option for the Detroit Lions, I don't believe that would be the wisest option, just because that is $19 million in just one season. That would be one of the highest paid wide receiver contracts in football. And with the Detroit Lions cap space, with their cap management at the moment, I don't see that realistically working out very well for Detroit. The other big name of this class is Romeo Okwara. Now, Romeo Okwara is coming off a major breakout season, having 10 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 18 quarterback hits, and 3 forced fumbles in 2020, as well as just making a lot of big plays in very key and very big moments for Detroit. Now, Romeo Okwara will likely not be receiving as big of a contract as Kenny Golladay. He had a very productive season last year and was actually one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, recording double-digit sacks, double-digit TFLs, 3 forced fumbles, double-digit QB hits. Like, he was a very productive pass rusher for the team last year, especially considering he didn't really have his running mate Trey Flowers to go pass rush alongside with him for many games this season. Now, Romeo Okwara is a guy I think the Lions should re-sign. He's a very good pass rusher for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, in just 3 seasons, he's recorded a total of 19 sacks for the team, which is far more productive and far more efficient than any other pass rusher that is on the team. And although Romeo Okwara will likely be getting a big contract, I do think it's worth it for the Detroit Lions. You know, top pass rushers are not easy to come by, and I'm not saying Romeo is an elite pass rusher by any means, but a guy that's going to get you 7.5 to 10 sacks a season on average is a guy that deserves a decent contract, and is a guy, especially a guy that is only 5 years into his NFL career, that is going to be useful and is going to be a guy you can build around for the future. If you're looking at who to pay the franchise tag if neither one wants to re-sign, I still use it on Romeo Okwara, as pass rushers, as in good pass rushers, are much tougher to find. Good pass rushers are much tougher to come across than good wide receivers. So I do think the Lions should let Kenny Golladay walk. I do think the Lions should let Kenny Golladay walk in free agency and go get his money and go allow him to have a chance to chase a ring. However, if they do have the opportunity to bring back Romeo Okwara, I think they should absolutely give it an attempt, as he was by far the most productive pass rusher and is by far the best pass rusher on the team. Now, looking at the rest of the class, right, because those are really the 2 big names. Obviously, we went over the guys that don't want to come back to Detroit, but what about the smaller guys? What about the backup, the role players, the depth players, and some of the rotational guys? Well, there are a lot of those players in this class for the Detroit Lions. There are a lot of players in this free agent class that are going to be role players, that are going to be borderline starters, but guys that aren't going to ask for huge contracts, guys that haven't earned huge contracts from the Detroit Lions, and guys that, you know, just really aren't going to be asking for that much and won't be that big of a burden for Detroit. Now, when you look at who to re-sign as the Detroit Lions, I have the Detroit Lions, and I think the Detroit Lions will re-sign Matt Prater to come back as the kicker. He was a little inconsistent last year, was a little shaky last year. However, he does have a new special teams coordinator this season, I think part of Matt Prater's struggles was the holding at kicker, not necessarily because Jack Fox did a bad job, but more because it's just a different player. It's a different guy holding the ball, and he probably does it a little different than Matt Prater was used to. I think that will get a little better, and I think Prater will get a little bit more used to that in the 2021 season. And even with Prater's inconsistencies, he still single-handedly won us 3 of our 5 games. I mean, the Cardinals game, the Redskins game, and the Falcons game was obviously, he hit the game winner in all 3. That's 3 of our 5 wins right there. I mean, he is still a very clutch kicker, still a very big-legged kicker, can hit pretty much any field goal from 50 to 60 yards. I mean, anything 50 or in should be automatic for him. Anything 50 plus, you still feel pretty solid about. Matt Prater, as inconsistent as he was last year, I still don't think the Lions are going to find a much better kicker in the NFL than what they have in Matt Prater. Now, another player I think the Lions should re-sign is Jamal Agnew. I think he's going to be decent wide receiver depth for a wide receiver room that is incredibly young, incredibly lacking, as they only have 2 players returning for this season. A wide receiver core that is very bare, a wide receiver core that doesn't have a lot of people returning this year unless there are players that get re-signed. And although I think he can develop into a decent wide receiver, especially with the addition of Antoine Randall El, I'm picking him up more for his kick and punt return ability. He was an all-pro kick and punt returner as a rookie. He's not gone a single season without a return touchdown. He is one of the best returners in the NFL. I'd say top 5 returner in the NFL easily. I would re-sign him. He's going to be cheap. He's not going to be asking for a big contract, and you're going to get a young, explosive wide receiver and a young and explosive returner for a very reasonable contract if you're the Detroit Lions. And I think Jamal Agnew can add explosiveness on the special teams as well as the offense if he's utilized correctly, and I think he can just be a fun weapon for the special teams and for the offense to kind of toy and play around with as they kind of progress through the season. Now, another wide receiver I think the Lions look to bring back this year is Mohamed Sanu. Now, Mohamed Sanu is an older wide receiver. He's a veteran of the NFL. He's been around the league. He's been in a lot of different systems, and with this wide receiver core being so young, with this wide receiver core not having a lot of experience, especially if Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones do not return, I think that experience at wide receiver is going to be big in Mohamed Sanu. Not to mention, I thought last year he played very solid for the Detroit Lions. I think he was pretty good once he got here, once he started practicing, and once he actually got into games. I thought he showed up. I thought he played very, very well for the time he was in there. He is an older wide receiver. I believe he'll be 32 once the NFL season kicks off next year. However, I think his experience and I think him being a cheap veteran wide receiver will allow the Detroit Lions to bring him back. And I think if the Lions can bring Mohamed Sanu back, it will be on a cheap contract. It'll be a guy that, has experience, a guy that's a veteran, and a guy that still puts up solid production year in and year out, even if he is an aging wide receiver. Now, the next person I think the Lions look to re-sign is Miles Kilburg. Miles Kilburg is now up for a contract. He is officially a free agent. And while Miles Kilburg isn't necessarily a starting safety, he's not necessarily a starting linebacker. He is a special teams ace for this team. He's been a big special teams player for a long time for Detroit. We saw him in the onside kick. We've seen him make several very big special teams tackles for the Detroit Lions in the past. He is a captain of the special teams. I believe he's a very big part of that special teams. He's a leader in the locker room, and I think a guy of that value, even though he's a special teams ace and isn't necessarily a defensive player for you, he's more of a special teams player. Those players do have value, and NFL teams with good special teams tend to be pretty good. Special teams is kind of a cherry on top. It's kind of the frosting outside the cake. It's not necessarily what's going to win you football games, but it can be the difference between you winning and losing football games. And I think keeping a special teams ace, keeping a special teams captain, and keeping a leader of the football team is going to be big for building culture in Detroit. And I think Miles Kilburg, I think his mindset, I think the way he approaches the game is what Dan Campbell wants to see in his football players. And I think Miles Kilburg is going to bring that mentality and bring that energy to practice every single day that Dan Campbell will be looking for. Now, Tony McRae is in a very similar situation. He was brought in last year as a free agent, signed on a 1-year deal, and now is once again a free agent. I think the Lions bring him back as well. Again, another special teams ace. He played very well on special teams while he was healthy for the Detroit Lions last year. Wasn't really crazy at cornerback, wasn't really expected to step in, and I don't expect him to step in at all next year. However, as I said, he was a very good special teams player, will be a very cheap contract. You can sign him 1-2 years. He'll be a starter, he'll be a starting gunner, he'll be starter on kickoffs coverage. I mean, he's just a solid special teams ace, very good special teams player when healthy, and hopefully he gets to stay healthy for the entire season once again. And then the final player that I have returning to the Detroit Lions out of this free agent class is linebacker Jarrad Davis. Now, I know some people are going to disagree with me on this one. I know a lot of people do not like Jarrad Davis. However, I still feel that Jarrad Davis has some talent, and I'm hoping this new staff, I'm hoping this new coaching regime will use Jarrad Davis effectively, and I'm hoping they will be smart enough to put Jarrad Davis in positions where he can be successful. Matt Patricia did not understand Jarrad Davis's skill set. Matt Patricia benched Jarrad Davis several times for the flukiest reasons. Jarrad Davis continuously made plays when he was on the field last year in the very limited snaps he did receive. So, I mean, looking at what Jarrad Davis did last season with incredibly limited and incredibly rare snaps and an incredibly rare snap count, I do think they re-signed Jarrad Davis. Jarrad Davis did make quite a few plays in the small amount of play time he did get last year. He should be a cheap option, and hopefully with the addition of Aaron Glenn, hopefully with a new linebackers coach, and hopefully with a new and smarter regime that's going to look to use matchups and going to look to use their players in more effective ways, and fit the scheme to the players versus fitting their players to a scheme, I think is going to help Jarrad Davis tremendously. And I do think actually that Jarrad Davis does have a breakout year next year. I think Aaron Glenn, I think the defensive coaching staff figures him out. I think they put him in a good position and they finally let him play his true role that he was meant to play when Jim Caldwell drafted him, which is a run and chase linebacker, a guy that's going to be at the line of scrimmage, a guy that you're going to send after the quarterback 4, 5, maybe even 6 times a game, get that pressure, get a guy in on the quarterback, a big, fast, athletic linebacker that can go chase down running backs. He's going to be a linebacker and he should be a running back that is a see ball, get ball linebacker. He should not drop into coverage. He should not have to make a lot of different decisions, should not have to cover a lot of different routes, and should not have to be in charge of a lot of different motions and scheme fits. However, Jarrad Davis is a very athletic linebacker. Jarrad Davis is a guy that continuously made plays even in a scheme that did not favor his skill set. And I think next year with this new coaching staff, with this new regime, I do believe they use Jarrad Davis better. I think Jarrad Davis is a breakout season after re-signing and returning in Detroit. Now, moving on to the players that I believe the Detroit Lions should let walk this offseason. The first and the biggest name I think the Lions should release is Duron Harmon. Now, Duron Harmon admittedly is a fairly good leader in the locker room. He's a very good locker room voice, gets a lot of guys inspired, gets a lot of guys ready on game day, and is a leader in that locker room. However, he's a poor tackler and he's not even that good in coverage. He's a coverage safety that is just okay in coverage. And I think being an older safety, being an aging regressing safety, his athletic ability, his athletic prowess is leaving him a little bit. And I think we could get better value in the draft. I think we can very easily replace Duron Harmon either in free agency or in the draft. And I think we have a safety on the roster in Tracy Walker, as well as several safeties throughout the draft class that can fill Harmon's role and actually be better at that role than Duron Harmon was last year for a cheaper and better contract. Now, the next player I believe the Lions should move on from is Don Muhlbach. Now, Don Muhlbach is the oldest veteran on the team, I believe going into his 18th NFL season. He very well could retire this offseason. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but even if he does come back, even if he is a member of the NFL next year, and even if he is an NFL veteran next season, I believe the Lions should let him walk. As I said, old veteran, no reason to really re-sign him, no reason to really keep him around. Long snappers are not, they're obviously a big part of the team. Obviously, you need a good long snapper for your team. Honestly, if he is willing to re-sign for super cheap, I don't mind bringing him back, but I do think just getting a new guy in there and kind of really fully resetting this roster and getting rid of the last piece of this old Lions franchise, I think could be a decent mentality move for the Detroit Lions. However, if they do re-sign Don Muhlbach for like a 1-year, super cheap league minimum kind of a deal, I wouldn't be upset either. Now, the third player I think the Lions should let walk this offseason is Danny Amendola, the $6 million man, the man that should not have gotten a contract last year, however, was still awarded a $6 million extension. Now, Danny Amendola was okay for the Lions this year. He was relatively healthy for the entire season. However, he's an older veteran. He may even retire this season. I believe he is 33 going on 34. I think his talents can be replaced. I think his production can be replaced by a guy like Quintez Cephas. I think Quintez Cephas can man the slot relatively well. I think he can be a good slot receiver. He runs pretty good routes, gets pretty decent separation, and when he does catch the ball, when the ball is in his hands, he does not go down very easily. I think that Danny Amendola production can be very easily replaced by Quintez Cephas, obviously being a much cheaper contract than Danny Amendola and letting the veteran walk and replacing it with younger, fresher blood and more athletic ability and more ability overall, and generally just more production and a better outlook for the future. Now, the next player I want to release, the next player I want to let walk for the Detroit Lions is a guy that was signed last year by the Detroit Lions, and that is Darryl Roberts. Now, I didn't think Darryl Roberts played particularly poorly for the Lions last season. However, I didn't think he was really a good cornerback, and I think his talents, I think his production for this team is very easily replaceable. He's an older cornerback, did have 1 interception last year, but as I said, was just an okay cornerback. Wasn't really great, wasn't really bad, was just kind of a solid depth guy, a guy that could step in, but even when he stepped in, wasn't really making plays, wasn't really getting good deflections. I think Mike Ford should start over Roberts. I think Okudah, I think Amani, and I think Trufant, if he is on the team come next season, I think they'll all start over him, and I just don't see the reason in re-signing Darryl Roberts, where you could get a very similar cornerback, very similar production, very similar skill set in the 5th or 6th round of the NFL draft. Now, the last couple of players that I want to release are all for the same reason, so I'm I'm just going to put them all and group them all together. Now, the three final free agents of this free agent class for the Lions are Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Reggie Ragland, and Oday Aboushi. Now, I think all of these players could realistically come back to the Detroit Lions. I think Jalen Reeves-Maybin is probably one of the more athletic linebackers on this team, so I think he could realistically be re-signed. I thought Reggie Ragland played incredibly well last year. I thought he was very productive in the Lions system. And Oday Aboushi is just an kind of meh backup kind of tackle. I think all three of their talents, I think all three of their productions could be very easily replaceable. I think you can get a pretty decent run stopper, to replace Reggie Ragland. I think you can get a more athletic version of Jalen Reeves-Maybin to step in coverage if you need him to. And I think you can very easily upgrade over Oday Aboushi with a guy like Logan Stenberg, who's on the roster, or one of the backup guards, one of the projected backup guards in this year's NFL draft. Now, with all that being said, that is the entire free agent class. Again, just a quick recap. I would love to re-sign Kenny Golladay if he wants to come back for cheap. However, I don't see it happening. I think the Lions should very heavily pursue Romeo Okwara, Matt Prater, Jamal Agnew, Mohamed Sanu, Miles Kilburg, Tony McRae, and Jared Davis. And they should let Duron Harmon, Don Muhlbach, Danny Amendola, Darryl Roberts, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Reggie Ragland, and Oday Aboushi walk. Now, with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, as it is the first day that players can be franchise tagged, it is the first day that players can start getting signed technically to NFL rosters. I wanted to take a look at the Lions free agent class, really wanted to take a step back, take a broader view of it, and see who the Lions should bring back, who the Lions should consider bringing back, and who the Lions should let walk. Now, with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below, what would you guys do as far as re-signing and letting players walk? Do you agree with my re-signings? Do you agree with the players I let walk? Would you bring back somebody that I let walk, or would you let somebody walk that I decided to bring back? I'd be very curious to see where you guys think the Lions should go. I'd be very curious to see what direction you guys think the Lions should pursue coming this offseason. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video. If there is Lions news before tomorrow, then I will obviously make a video letting every single person know. But until then, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow with more Lions content. Thank you all for watching the video. Bye, guys.